And we are live at another edition of A Book and a Beverage here on Bald&Balding. I swear Ro will be here eventually, I think, unless he's in trouble with his wife, who knows. But anyway, more importantly, we are here today with the honored guest that is Bryan Wilson. Bryan, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. How are you, Mike?
Living the dream. It's scary and it's recurring, but it's a dream.
Yep.
So we always want to start. Actually, no, Ro's not here to see it, but everyone, please like and subscribe. I got that in, Ro. I remembered.
I have to click the little button that turns my microphone off.
So, Bryan, do you have a book and/or beverage that you would like to mention?
I'll start with the beverage. If anyone watched my interview a couple nights ago, it's the same. The good old Yingling. It's probably my drink of choice.
You can't go wrong with a Yingling, man.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely
Kind of surprised you're not poking down a Sam Adams though up there in Connecticut.
New England area. Yeah. That was my early 20s. I think I went on the Sam Adams trend. How you doing, Bo? But yeah, no, I've evolved to the. Now I take pride in the oldest brewery in the States. So,
all right.
But yeah, and then my this was my debut novel. It published last year, The Forsaken Planet. It is book one of The Power of the Stars. It's a sci-fantasy space opera. That's my book, and then actually this will be the first I get to show it. My proof came in.
Woohoo!
Where is it? It's muted colors, though. I'm not happy with the colors, but I'll get that resolved before publishing. But this publishes April 16th this year. Will be book 2 coming out.
You've seen it here first on tax day. Nice. Got your taxes done. Use some of your refund. Go buy his second book.
Most of them are. I mean, through my business, I have to. Thank you, Annie. Through my business, I deal with an accountant, so I'm usually pretty good of getting everything to them and doing it right.
Letting them sort it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
it's good now though. Now I can add all my. I could go buy everyone's book and say, oh, it's a write-off, research purposes.
There you go. So you said what? April's coming out.
Yeah.
And how many books are going to be in the series?
So I'm. There's not a set amount yet. I'm anticipating between 5 and 7. I personally would like to keep it at the 5 range, but I have pretty good book 3, a good chunk of book 4 mapped out. But like I said, I don't have the complete ending mapped out yet, so it's going to be somewhere in that 5 to 7 range.
So I can tell you, when I started my series, it's going to be a 4-book series, and I've now published book 4 of my 7-book series.
Oh boy!
So Ro, how about you? How long was your first series going to be?
My first series was going to be 1 book, and then I'll go another one, but it ended up being 6. My second series, the plan was 11. It's going to be 5.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
It's kind of like
11 books
I could have dragged it out for 11, but it would have been tedious at that point.
11 total books, though, man. That's impressive. Good job.
So you got to, just be as many as it needs to be. Don't be specific, because you'll end up like, remember when I told you that? I lied.
Yeah, that's true. I probably should just stay mute. Don't even answer those questions.
One of my free novellas that I use for a book funnel actually says this is the prequel to a 12-book series. No, it's not.
Hey, you get those people who love those long series, and that's kind of a niche in and of itself. So
yeah, those people are even fewer and further between. Annie loves long series. She's never been here before, has she?
She is actually someone I was talking about before we came on, Bookstagram, with you guys. She's
okay.
Don't scare her away, Ro. Don't scare her away.
She actually saw my interview the other day talking about 5 to 7, and she messaged me after, and she was like, "Don't put a limit. Just write a long series. We love long series." So,
well, I guess you could say my 5-book series is a continuation of my 6-book series, so we could say there's 11 overall. And there will be 4 more later in a different series. Anyway,
gotcha.
You brought up Instagram. Let's talk about that a little bit, because we talked a little bit about TikTok, which is something Mike stays away from, like, bubonic
Daniel is in the house.
rats.
Nice.
He's a copy.
So what do you post on Instagram? Because I use Instagram if like my cat does something clever once a year.
So the reason before I published, I was like, I avoided social media at all costs through most of my life. And, but I knew when self-publishing, I got to kind of give it an attempt, otherwise I feel like it's waving the white flag a little bit, unless you're like a pro marketer, which I'm not, but yeah, so Instagram was the one I chose to heavily go towards because it's the only one I actually did use in my personal life before. I had never used Twitter once. I used Facebook in my early 20s, but I hadn't been on it in like 10 years when I published this. So
you're not missing anything, by the way.
But yeah, so I went on Instagram and I kind of I didn't know what I was doing, and it took me a while to kind of get my bearings on there. But I've slowly got the ball rolling a little bit, and actually just today I got my 1,000 follower, so it's a little bit of a milestone. But yeah, and I just kind of stay genuine to who I am. I give mostly book material, but I also post a little bit. I post my kids a little bit on there. I don't show their faces. I'm not comfortable doing that, but I kind of it's enough to give the feel of, yep, there it is, 1,000 even. I'm surprised one hasn't dropped off.
1,001 now. I'm 1,001.
Oh, great.
So you all know what it looks like. There's no excuse. Go on there and join his Instagram. See what he's doing.
Yes, awesome. But yeah, no. So I just, like I said, it's a little bit of my books. It's mostly my books, but a little bit of my life, and then sharing other authors' works on there and connecting with them. I do giveaways with group giveaways with authors. I'm actually part of an indie sci-fi giveaway right now. It's still ongoing, and it's basically it's 10 of us. All you basically got to do is follow, like the post that we posted, and share it, tag some friends in the comments, and that makes you eligible to win a signed copy of all 10 books.
Nice.
Yeah, and so this is my second one of those I'm doing. I actually have a third that will be coming next week with, I'm part of an author group called the Break-Ins, and ours is going to be, it's kind of our first giveaway thing we're doing. We're all excited for it. So that's going to go into effect next week. And I've learned those actually gain you a lot of traction on, because it brings a lot of new faces to your account. And just, I've been fortunate that when I've done them in the past, it's brought a lot of new faces, and that they've stayed. I guess, have been interested, if you will. And then besides that, it's just, I tried doing Instagram and Twitter when I first started, and I felt like I was hitting a brick wall with Twitter. I couldn't get anywhere. I don't know if the algorithm was just squashing all my stuff, but right when I got on Instagram, I still was getting some bookstagrammers who were liking my material, and because of that, it gave me a little confidence to reach out to them even before my book was out. And granted, I'm someone with no background in the writing community, and a lot of them were still just seeing the cover and just seeing the blurb were very gracious and generous and kind, and just said, yeah, I'd love to read your book, send it over. And that actually helped get me a fair amount of reviews when my book did first publish, which I think is essential for a first-time author. If you're sitting there with just 5 reviews on there months after, it's harder for people to take the work seriously. So, I'm only at 56 now, but 56 is also great for a lot of self-published authors. And I feel fortunate to have that, and I think it's made people respect my book, or look at it with a little bit of respect, a little more than they may have otherwise.
When did your book come out? Your first book?
It came out in June of last year. June 13th, was it?
Yeah, 56 is pretty solid, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think I have.
I'm very proud of it. I never, when I
across
published, I was like, I didn't think I'd even get to 50 ever. So
Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned something there. Hold on. Give me 1 second.
no problem.
Because I'm old, I have to write something down.
It's a good time for a sip.
Huh?
We're going to sample our beers while we're waiting.
You go ahead and do that. Carry on. What kind of, anybody can obviously go to your Instagram page and look, but what kind of photos do you put out there? Obviously you're going to put a cover of your book every now and then, but it can't be all of that.
Yeah, no, it's I don't know. I got to open it up and look at it. It's mostly book material, but I also have, I have my covers are my main thing that are pinned to my profile. I also have a video. I do reels. I have a video that's pinned to my profile. It's kind of an introductory video of myself, and it's actually one I did for Matt for Beard of Darkness. He made a collage of a bunch of us indie authors, and I sent it to him, and then I just posted it on my Instagram as well, killing two birds with one stone. And I hate filming myself, so I do it as rarely as possible. But those actually are what kind of get the most traction on something like Instagram, though, is showing your face, showing you holding your book. Kind of, I guess it's the whole TikTok phenom, right? I'm not on TikTok, but people kind of just like seeing the face behind the words, I guess you could say. And, I've done opening up, unboxing other people's work. And then it's just a bunch of reels. I've posted pictures that kind of give a hint of what my story is about, just stuff like that. I also share when other bookstagrammers or other authors might share a picture of showing my work. I share that on my feed. So it's just stuff like that.
You post something every day?
No, I actually, for the majority, when I first started, I was posting everything maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks. Then it kind of got, as things got a little better, I got a little bit of traction on there. I was posting like once a week. And for whatever reason, recently, I've started posting more. I don't want to say it's once a day, but I'm probably getting like 3 or 4 posts a week. This has been for like the last month or so. I haven't really seen a big jump off of it, but I think that's just it wasn't really intentional. It's just coinciding more with my my release and me starting the market for my release coming. I do post my stories pretty heavily every day, which those are like 24-hour things that pop up. But the feed itself, I was always more comfortable like once a week because I'm like I said, I'm not social media heavy, so it's hard to come up with something to actually put on there that's going to stay on there forever. But I just think as more things are coming along for me, it's getting a little easier to find things to just naturally put on there. I don't even have to put too much thought into it anymore. So
yeah,
it's
that
like snowball effect that I want to happen with my book. You get enough readers to read it, and then next thing you know, the marketing's done for you. You
have a mailing list as well?
Yes, I do. I've only 2 or 3 months I've been running it now. But I only gained a list to begin with from one of those giveaways I mentioned. That was kind of that was how people join the readers lists of everyone. And we got about 200 people who actually joined it was 10 of us at the time. They joined all of our lists and I've been running ever since then. That was in November. I've been running email newsletters out, and I'm still right around that same amount. I've kind of been balancing those who unsubscribe. I've been getting new ones. So
yeah, it'll grow. You'll lose a few every month. That's whatever.
Yeah, that's natural from what I understand.
Yeah.
So John, I'm John. I'm sorry, I'm old.
His name is written right there on the screen, man.
Yeah, I swear this is my first beer too. So Bryan, I'm sitting here. I'm doing my best not to punch myself because I was also part of that with Beard of Darkness where I did a video.
Okay.
And after I gave it to him, I'm like, I'll put this on my hard disk and forget that I hit. And so no one else is, because this is how internet savvy Mike is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No. I just got lucky, I guess, thinking about, because I could have very easily done that too. It could have just disappeared down the photos of my kids or my cats or something like that in my phone and been forgotten. But luckily I thought to just pin it on there and it worked out.
Before we talk about your book, I have something far more important to talk about.
Okay.
Is that a Simpsons pinball machine, like video game behind you?
So it's here, let me it's a little arcade game. Now it's down real low because it's I got my kids are only 5 and 3, so I built it. It came with like a booster thing, but when I built it, I had to build it. I was like, it was my closest thing I'll ever do to say I was like rocket science over here. But when I built it, I kept the booster off so my kids, because they're only so tall, could play it. But it was, I don't know, you remember the old game in the arcades way back when, the Simpsons game? If you're Bart, you got the skateboard, you're hitting the guys. Marge has the vacuum. that game. It used to be in the arcades way back in the day. I remember we used to have a place called The Rec where I grew up, and it was just probably had 100 arcade games, and I used to go every weekend to it. But yeah, that was like the type of game that was there in the early 90s. And so
and that's how you fund your covers.
Yeah.
Go get a quarter from mom if you want to play again.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, no, I forget where I found this on. It was some website, and it wasn't that expensive. It was only like, I want to say it was like $250, and it's actually got a bunch of games in one too. And we've definitely worn out the use of it. My oldest is only 5, so I'm sure we'll use it more as I wanted the Turtles in Time, the Ninja Turtles game, but that one was like almost $1,000, so I wasn't paying that.
There is nothing better than an arcade game with a joystick and a button to teach your kids how to effectively use profanity.
Pretty much, yeah. Yep. We haven't gotten to that point yet, luckily, but
oh, you will.
Yeah, we'll see in the future.
All right. So your story, Mike was telling me that you're writing that Forsaken Planet is science fiction fantasy.
Yeah. I basically call it a sci-fantasy.
Okay, so I've read bits of romantasy, which is a horrible concoction of fantasy and romance. I mean,
so that's the trend, right? Romantasy is the big trend. Dragons and fantasy is the trend. I'm hoping, we're starting the new trend, sci-fantasy. That's going to be.
I think there's been sci-fantasy out before. I mean,
for sure.
Saberhagen was did something like that, right?
Yeah,
long time ago.
I would say the most popular is Star Wars. To me, that's more sci-fantasy than
of course,
than anything.
So how do you incorporate the two?
Well, so my story it starts off taking place on our planet, our contemporary times. It follows some Joe 20-somethings, and basically the science fiction aspect comes in when alien spacecraft appear in the skies and basically attack Earth. It's not. I'm trying to do this without spoiling anything. It's not an invasion, but there's a reason for them attacking. The events unfold. Our characters get caught up in the middle of it, and it kind of turns their world upside down. It turns all of Earth's world upside down, because there's also a huge revelation, and that is that this alien force is human, and we come to find out there's multiple other planets that humans live on with multiple different factions and powers going on out there. And it's basically a major power struggle between the two top players out on these planets is the reason why one came to Earth, without spoiling anything. And then we also come to learn a big reason why they've known about us. We haven't known about them, and they purposely left Earth in the dark. And a big reason for that is
because we're assholes.
Well, that too, but that's my biggest theory of why aliens never came here, because why would you ever? We can't even get along with each other. We're not going to get along with them. But no. So then the big revelation is they also can control this power, which is called Solera. It's basically a magic energy force, but think the Force from Star Wars, but everyone has it. And so their whole worlds, their technology, their weaponry, their societies just completely revolve around this power. And so that's a big part of why they left Earth in the dark this whole time. And that's why Earth is considered the Forsaken Planet. And then so there's a whole chosen one trope, and the main characters have to decide. There's this fight coming. It's kind of there's two, like I said, there's these two powers, and one kind of says, "Oh, Earth's in the know now. You want to come with us and fight them? We'll help train you." And that's kind of what happens. The main characters have to decide if they want to go off, and spoiler, they do. And it's very much a training novel from there.
All right. So your book sets up the whole training montage before they go off.
Yeah. My first book, I tell everyone who I'm trying to warn people who read it, expect a very different tone and pace from the second book, because the first book is almost, I've had a couple interviews now and I keep saying this, but it's almost like a prequel to the whole series. That's probably not, I don't know if that's a good strategy for a first time author. But I think when people read my second book, it's going to really make the first one pay off. Kind of the whole battle school trope will have more effect, and seeing the camaraderie form amongst the characters and getting all the different characters in, is I think that's going to pay off when they read the second one, because you also have to believe these are kids from Earth. They're immature kids that didn't have any responsibility, and now they're getting thrust out here and getting this huge responsibility thrust onto them. You got to believe they not only learned this power, but they became very capable and adept with it. And, especially with what ends up unfolding in the second book. So it was very important to me that I made that believable through my first book.
Do people from Earth have access to this power?
No, that's the big thing. Even the people who can access it off Earth, it cannot be accessed on Earth. That's why Earth was completely left blind in the dark. There's other reasons. There's another big reason behind it, but that is one of the main reasons.
This is this. John's just saying here, the second week, an author has said that like the first book was like The Hobbit. If you're going to say your first book is like something, saying it's like The Hobbit is not a bad way to go.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably how I should have worded it instead of just saying a prequel. Thank you for that. Maybe that's what I'm going to use from now on. I still got a couple more interviews coming up before this thing
there you go.
Publishes. So,
see, I thought when you started all this, you were going to say that these people came and they attacked Earth because they were just sick. They get here and they say, you've been feeding us the Patriots for 20 years, and we get here and now we have to watch the damn Chiefs all the time. Come on, there's 32 teams. Let's mix it up a little bit.
A very valid reason, but hey, I'm a Giants fan, so I got my fill in between
We're
those.
Done. Mike, turn this off.
Well, I thought you said you grew up in Vermont. I thought that would make you a Patriots.
New England Patriots.
Yeah.
Okay.
Giants. So you're bashing the Patriots. You're saying you're sick of the Patriots. I thought.
Well, no, I said the aliens would say that.
Okay.
Everyone else is sick of the Patriots, even me, and I don't watch football.
Yeah. Yep. I can't say I was really sick of the Patriots because Eli was.
Shut up. We're going down a bad road here. Because of him, we have to listen to Mercury Morris every year, drink his damn champagne.
If my screen goes black, everyone, it's not because of misconnection.
It's not technical difficulties.
Yeah.
I'm on your freaking Instagram now. Look out.
Oh boy, I got a 1-star rating coming in tomorrow, don't I?
I wouldn't do that you're aware
of. So I prepared for this interview. I have questions that I wrote down.
Look at that on grid paper, no less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're such a nerd.
So my first question for you is, and this is all helped by AI because I don't think of these things, but what authors inspired you to write The Forsaken Planet? I almost said world.
Sorry. I told you before we came on, I told you no one can ever get my book right. So that would have been completely fine.
That's a lot of syllables there.
Yeah. But I'd say the big one, the first one would be, I would say Tolkien, because The Hobbit is the very first science fiction fantasy book that I read. I read that when I was 12, and that's what launched me into to my love for reading, which eventually is what launched me into my desire to write. But definitely the biggest one would be Ender's Game or Orson Scott Card. But I just say, I guess, Ender's Game. I've never read any of his other work, but that was the big one that really gave me my first push to want to do this. I've always loved fantasy. Fantasy is my main go-to read, but I do love science fiction as well. But I've always had a love for space and kind of ancient history and any sort of connection that may have to space and stars and stuff like that. So, and that's a big theme of my story. And I kind of mashed it all together. And then and Ender's Game really is what, if you read the second half of my novel, really, I think that's the most that people have read it and they've said, yeah, that's definitely the book I get the most relation to, because there's really cool, like, futuristic simulations that go on during that sequence. So
I love Ender's Game, by the way. So
awesome. Nice.
Nothing like manipulating a child's mind.
Well, it's not. We don't go quite there in my book, but it's more the battle school style is similar.
What else you got that list there, Mikey?
Okay, so I actually watched some of your interview a couple days ago.
Okay.
So I know that this this idea for the story's been on and off now for a decade or two?
It's been about 20. I started this, I want to say I started doing the outline when I was like 17 for it, I think. And I'm 37 now. So about 20 years.
Wow.
But I want to ask, when did it go from just an idea this would be cool to when you sat down, like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to write this and publish? When was that turnover when you said, let's do this for real?
Well, so yeah, I mean, it started basically as a hobby, and and I just, on and off going to school. I started college. I was still working on it, and I want to say my early, maybe like 23, 24 is when I finished the first draft. It still was a hobby then, but that was right around the time I got a master's degree in college. So, that was around that time, I want to say, is when I finished the first draft, working on and off. And then I started where I burnt myself out in college. I started working construction, and that was when I kind of went to the side for a few years. I want to say around when I was like 27 is when I really started going hard at editing, and same thing through my stuff in life, getting married, all that stuff. I was on and off for another few years, and I edited it real hard. I want to say about 5 years ago, I came back to it and did a ton of editing to the point where I thought it was ready to publish. And I'm glad I didn't do it then. It was not ready to publish. I didn't work with an editor at that point or anything. But this cover I purchased back then, like 5 years ago. This was actually a pre-made cover, but I had customizations made to it. But then I had my kids, and I had my first daughter, and everything just got put to the side. Obviously, when that happens, it takes a little while to adjust to being a parent. I also, in that time, I worked new home construction, and I started building our house for my family. And so that was like a 2-year process too, that my full attention was going towards. So I didn't touch it for the first 5 years of my daughter being born. And it was at the end of 2022 when work started to slow down a little bit for me. I finally opened it up for the first time. And that was the first time I'd gone such a long stretch without reading it whatsoever. And it almost felt like I was reading someone else's work because it had been so long. And obviously I'm biased. I wrote it. I'm writing what I like, but reading it, I said to myself, this is good. This could sell. People could like this. I got to just bunker down and get it out there. And that's what I did. I spent like the next 6 to 8 months, worked with beta readers. I got a editor, and I did the whole deal, and I taught myself the whole thing, self-publishing. That was when I started my social media accounts, my author accounts. And then I got it out there in June last year.
Nice.
You've done two things there then that I absolutely, God bless you. The first is that you had something that you've written years ago that you stuck with. I think most of us have something in a bin somewhere that we started writing years ago that we may have gone back to and went, oh my God, that's awful, and just left it there. Right.
And mine was like that, believe me. I mean, my first draft was 240,000 words.
But you stuck with it, is my point.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you don't see that very often. The second is having been married for a while and having done a little DIY and some renovations, I just absolutely that you built a house. I understand that's what you do for work. I get that.
Well, I'm not physically building it, but I manage the construction of the.
Still, the bow stands for that.
Thank you. It's a very stressful and time-consuming job.
That is one of the biggest marriage trials I think there is having that happen, especially if you've got young children.
I don't know if my wife's watching. She won't be able to comment if she is, but she knows we had our struggles with many a late nights, and because she works full time too, and she's we try to 50-50 everything, but when I really get gridlocked and really busy, it doesn't work out so much, and that definitely led to some strife and learning to kind of work together around it.
Okay, so answer me this then, and Annie, being the only female that we see in the list here, I want you to jump in on this too. When your wife asks you like about curtains or anything, really, rugs, furniture and asks for your opinion on the color, and you sit there and think about it for a while, are you really in your head thinking, I don't give a shit?
I'm pretty fortunate in the sense my wife is not really picky with stuff like that. And when we were doing the house, we kind of were on the same page. It just so happened we were on the same page with a lot of things, but I think that's because both of us are kind of like what you said. I don't give a shit. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's
you will
really
have
great.
A happy life.
I lucked out in that sense. But yeah, no, we just, I remember picking the paint colors was a little bit but it wasn't an argument. We're both very much on the same page with stuff like that, and stuff with like carpets and stuff like that. I don't, oh, nice. I didn't know that. But yeah, stuff with like I didn't really care too much with stuff like that. So that was more, I just, go find a rug. I let my wife kind of choose the rugs and stuff, the throwdowns that we put down. And yeah, so it actually went fairly smoothly. And it might have been her working with me because she knew I don't think I've ever been more stressed out in my life than when I was building this house, because it was just that it also, we started framing in fall of 2019.
Oh, so, great timing. Excellent.
Yeah. So the middle of the construction ended up the whole pandemic, the lockdown, stuff like that.
Oh yeah. She was already $50 a board now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And, things ended up getting good, but at the start, we didn't know that. I thought everything was going to shut down and no one was going to be buying houses. Everyone was going to be bunkered in. So it was a very stressful time for my business, for sure.
Okay. Sorry. So we had that little deviation there, Mike. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So John Stevenson actually has a question.
Yeah, I saw that.
And then it ends with line or developmental, but he hit enter like I do before he was done.
Mine was definitely developmental editing. That was definitely, there were so many things that the editor I worked with brought to my attention that I just would never have thought of on my own. That's probably because I don't really have a background in writing. I didn't take any creative writing courses in college. I see a lot, like I'm part of these Discords and stuff, and I see a lot of the people talking about their degrees or their English lit professors and stuff like that. Like I didn't have any of that. So I kind of just taught myself as much as I could along the way. And that's when I said earlier, I'm glad I did not publish 5 years ago when I was considering it, was because I thought it was ready. It was not ready. Developmental editor definitely helped me go a long way to see, help me with things like show, don't tell, and, stuff like that. And my first book is still probably not perfect. It was definitely a struggle of, I'm taking something that was written over the course of close to 10 years and altered and made rewrites over the next 10 years. And, it's definitely the biggest, I want to say, criticism I got is the early portions of my book. And don't get me wrong, I spent a lot of time trying to clean that up. And I still think it's good. But it was kind of, that was the balance I had to find was I know the big thing with the editor was you need to get to a certain part of your book faster, was kind of what I was told. And I think kind of doing those edits, I might have went a little too fast with it. So that's kind of the balance to find. But at the same time, he brought so many things to my attention that just helped throughout the rest of the book that I think it just made me way overall a better writer.
I mean, go back to the first house you built. You could probably, if you went back to that, there's probably some changes you'd make, right?
Oh, God, I didn't. Absolutely. I didn't know what the heck I was. I mean, they're kind of both the same. When I first got into to building, it was kind of a fake it till you make it sort of situation. And that's kind of how I look at it with this author thing, too. It's just kind of a fake it till you make it,
Oh, yeah. How did you find a developmental editor? Because, I mean, we all talk about editors around here all the time, but I mean, finding them and choosing one that's actually going to work well with you.
Yeah, I mean, mine was, I like I said, I didn't have the connection. So mine was basically just Googling a bunch of services and stuff. And I kind of reached out, I want to say, to like 5 places. And I kind of just found the good balance of, oh, thank you, Annie. Yeah, she's one of my ARC readers. So book 2 is out to the ARC team. But yeah, I tried to find the good balance of who I felt I connected with the most, but also who was the most affordable. I couldn't go and spend $4,000 on it's a 175,000 word document. So some of the editors were actually $4,000 they wanted to charge. Yeah. So I had to, just find that balance. And don't get me wrong, I could have probably found someone that was more specified for a sci-fi book like this or a fantasy book. I think that maybe was where maybe there was a little bit of a disconnect, but I still ended up lucking out with a pretty good editor. So
did you try a few first? Did you like send a chapter to a few of them? And
yeah, I think, like I said, I want to say I sent to like 5 places, and each of them did a little sample thing for me, or if not each, most of them did a little sample thing for me.
So beyond price, then, what kind of differences did you notice between what an editor provided you?
What do you mean?
Like, if you had 5 samples, you had to choose one of them. What caused someone to be in the not chosen pile?
It's hard. This was a while ago. I was doing this.
Yeah, I'm just putting you on the spot here. No big deal.
No, I just want to say, like, I think when you get edits back, you're even from beta readers, from an editor, your whole thing is you're agreeing with some, you're not agreeing with others, right? A lot of this stuff is subjective. I think that was probably the big part of me, was who kind of sent me these. And I said, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And who sent me stuff, and I'll scratch in my head like, really? I don't know if I necessarily see that. And of course, yes, that doesn't mean it's right. That doesn't mean I went with the right choice, but I feel like that meant this person's kind of in my same headspace more so than maybe this other person was.
So I have a question for you. Did you use a developmental edit for book 2, or did you figure I learned what I need to learn and I'm going to go on my own now?
I did figure I learned what I need to learn and go on my own. I did
the same thing. I am guilty of that too. So,
but with that said, I also had a much larger. I only had 3 or 4 beta readers the first time around, and I had 7 or 8 this time. And a couple of them are paid beta readers who kind of give pretty in-depth analysis.
Yep.
So I did feel I had that to fall back on. But I was also just confident in my. In the story I have, in the draft I have. It's pretty fast paced. It's I took everything that editor kind of taught me, and is this scene necessary? Is it not necessary? The show don't tell, that type of stuff. And it was all in the back of I still had his notes right with me when I was writing the draft of that one, mm-hmm. and through my editing process of that one. And I'm hoping it'll turn up good. We'll see when I get my feedback. I just got my first ARC reader left a review today on Goodreads, and it was a 5-star. So
nice.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, it's tough. This whole self-published thing. We don't really bring much money in. And books of the lengths I write, my first one was 175,000. This one's 145,000. You can't do the whole developmental editor, the copy line editor, the proofreader. You got to kind of just pick and choose.
Well, you could. Well, but you're going to spend $5,000 to $10,000.
Yeah, and then my 2 kids are going to starve afterwards. So it's
yeah.
They're old enough they can work.
If you've got that kind of money to chuck into a hobby, and some people,
do. I wish I did. Believe me, if I had the funds, if I felt confident, I would. I absolutely would. I would go out and get them all, because you're obviously going to get the best product that way. But we got to do the best with what we can work. What we can work with right now.
So I have another question from my list, and this one I actually came up with, not the AI.
Okay.
So you were talking about people with, getting degrees in literature and whatnot. Well, I did a little bit of my stalking, which Rode keeps telling me I shouldn't say stalk, my research. But I saw that you got a mathematics degree.
I do, yeah. So that's it's actually funny. I recently interviewed the greatest podcast in the multiverse, Herman. I don't know if I'm mispronouncing it, Sternagel. One of his questions was, if there's a different multiverse out there, what's a different Bryan Wilson doing? And I said it's a very, I feel that's an interesting question for me, because what's that, ramen? Oh, ramen, yeah. Well, the college days there. But that's an interesting question for me, because I actually originally I was always good at math, and I was super interested in it in school. How you doing, Ryan? so I went, that's what I went to college for, was math. And I ended up getting a master's degree in it. And I got into my undergrad originally thinking I was going to become a teacher, and then just ended up not wanting to do that. And so when I went to my graduate, I started getting into actuarial work and studying to take the actuarial exams. And so I got my master's degree, and literally the same time I was studying for those exams, I went from one to the other of taking the exams. And I always prided myself on being, you know, a good student. I don't think I ever got below a C in like anything. And I just bombed that exam. And afterwards I was so like defeated and burnt out because I had just spent 6 years of studying so hard that that was when I was like, I just need a break. I need a few months of doing something else. And that was actually when I got into to construction through family contacts. And yeah, I worked under a builder for basically for the next like 3 years. And then I ended up starting my own company and went from there. I loved it. I mean, it was so different from everything else I had done to that point. I was, you know, you're working in a different place every day. You're working outside. I didn't have to do workouts. I was getting workouts while working, being, you know, the grunt labor guy for the first couple of years. And, you know, I was my own, you know, especially when I started my own business, I was my own boss. I was fortunate enough that investors kind of saw me working as the grunt and kind of progress. And then they trusted enough of me to, you know, let me work with them and start my own projects. And it just flowed from there. It took off, and fortunately I've done real well.
I think a writer with a background, much less a master's in mathematics, is probably the unicorn in the room.
Yeah, believe me, sometimes it feels like I'm living in two worlds and not
There's
fully
a
having
reason
one
we
foot.
have English literature degrees.
Yeah.
So my question for you, Bryan, is: did any equation make it into your book? Did you mention any?
No, I didn't. Actually, if you read my book, especially I think a little more in the second one, you get a lot of constructions, but that's been more recent. That's been my last 10 years. You know, the math was kind of the distant past at this point for me. So but it's
Bryan,
actually amazing how much math comes into running a construction company. You know, 'cause I need to know my numbers for everything, for not just the house building the house numbers and stuff like that. And because I lay out my whole foundations and stuff like that myself. So, you know, I've done my own excavation work and whatnot. And so, you know, that's all working with numbers, but also just keeping up on the numbers and knowing how the numbers are going to work with the market in terms of, you know, supplies and stuff like that. So it's definitely still used. My degree has come in great towards the construction end of things.
When you finished your master's, did you just kind of like luxuriate in a stupid book just because it wasn't the study stuff that you'd been reading for the last couple of years?
Honestly, when I finished my master's, like I said, that was when I transitioned over to construction, and that was when I started my Thursday through Sunday nights going out and partying a little bit, kind of having fun and taking the stress off a little bit. That kind of lasted for about 4 years till I met my wife. So
ruin everything. Man.
No, she made me a better person.
Saved your liver, absolutely.
Whether she's watching or not, that's your answer, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good
yes,
call.
it is.
Wise man. No, I just asked that because you know, finishing degrees, it was just like you're reading so much stuff for papers and everything.
No, definitely. And listen, all through all school,
I can read some fluff now and just not worry about it.
Yeah, and reading was always my getaway through all school. I mean, that's my one thing I say I have a background that I can actually write this stuff is. I was an avid reader, like I said, from being 12 years old on, and I continued doing it all through. I mean, especially my early 20s, I was reading a ton. I think that's when I read all the Game of Thrones. Want to say
not all of them.
The Jim Butcher. Oh, no. Well, we're never going to read all of them. So
you got to get that dig in once an episode.
Yep. But all the Jim Butcher book, you know, I was still reading hardcore through all that. So I think that's probably what has given me the best mind space to actually write. Is it's still a form of studying almost. It wasn't what I was doing, why I was doing it, but it's enough to at least give me the creative aspect of writing these stories.
Yeah. You ever play D&D?
I haven't. No, I didn't even know. I didn't even know what it was before I joined the this whole social media thing, and now I see it everywhere. But no, I never played it.
So, Ro, by the way, I actually played my first time D&D this past Sunday night.
Ooh, you lost your virginity. Well done.
Did you have fun?
Yeah, the other three people were all a year or a couple years older than me, so it was a very low energy vibe. It was wonderful.
Nice.
And what kind of character did you play?
I am a half elf ranger.
I would have gone cleric with you.
Well, the guy who's doing this, he said there are no clerics in his world.
All right, fair enough.
And they had a paladin and a dwarven fighter. So,
And what did you think?
like I said, low energy is just okay. This is what happens now is wonderful. The reason I've been wanting to play D&D is last year in April, I went to an author convention. I'm on a panel and someone said, "Where do you get your creativity from?" And down the line, like, I play D&D. I play D&D. I play D&D. And then comes a mic and I'm going, I have to schlep it all out myself. I don't play D&D. I really should, because apparently it makes things easier. So I've been saying since April that I was going to play D&D, and as one excuse after another. And finally, I went and I played.
It was like 30 minutes after that interview that he sat there and went, "Oh, I should have just said narcotics. That would have been perfect." Always.
Yeah, I've never played. I don't even know how you play that. I'd be lost.
It's obviously not hard when you know you got 12-year-olds everywhere playing it, so it's not. Honestly, sometimes this is from Annie. Honestly, sometimes watching YouTubers or Twitch streamers helps with battle scenes. Oh, it's a good idea. Actually, I've never really thought about that.
Yeah.
See, my battle scenes don't last that long because I just kind of I have to keep telling myself when I write, it doesn't need to make sense. It doesn't need to make sense, right? Mm-hmm. And just swinging a big old sword around, it just doesn't seem like something that would last a long time, right? It seems like it would be over pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, I think when we're writing, that's a big thing to try and get right in the writing is not drag the explanation of it out too long, because it's got to match the real life value of this is all happening in milliseconds. So,
yeah.
So how do you handle FTL?
FTL?
Faster than light travel.
Faster than light. Oh, so this is kind of the benefit I have is, as I said earlier, everything in my story kind of revolves around the magic system, this Solera, as it's called, that they use. And so basically that's my explanation of it is it's this massive force of I don't go too in depth. I'm very definitely soft sci-fi on that end of things, but it's basically just a giant force of this power that they are able to use it to jump systems.
So you just MacGuffin the hell out of that.
Yeah, basically. It was definitely, so when I was in school, like I said, always loved math. History was like one of my favorite classes. I just was always obsessed with anything history related. And obviously I liked writing and reading. So liberal arts, English class, I was always a fan, but science was it's odd that I wrote a science fiction. I guess everything about me is an anomaly because I hated science. It was the one thing I didn't come naturally. I wasn't good at it. And that's been probably my toughest thing with writing this, especially in my second book. It gets much more spacecraft involved, space battles, stuff like that. I have to kind of go a little more in depth on some of this stuff. And, but like I said, luckily I do have my magic system, and I very heavily explained in the first book, everything revolves around it. I mean, they heat their homes, they light their streets through this magic, which makes sense. I mean, if we all had the force, I think we'd be able to come up with easier ways to do all this stuff. Right. So I'm able to incorporate that in and kind of ease the burden on myself a little bit.
Well, I mean, the other thing is the people who get all wrapped about the axle about this, it's like, oh, you can't have this. It's like, show me a spaceship that has what you're talking about,
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's the beauty of what we write. We can kind of make it our own thing, especially in the age of self-publishing now. So eventually something's going to become a trend, and it's going to work. Sam is reading my book. He's been reading it for about 3 months. So I hope that doesn't doesn't say doesn't tell about how good it is. To be fair, I was reading his book for 3 months too, but I think as authors with full-time jobs, we don't get much time to read anymore.
Yeah, I hear you.
So, Brian, another question for you that I came up with, not the AI, because, pat
That's
myself on the
two.
back. I know.
One episode.
You deserve it.
Slow down.
I always tell people that I have very passionate arguments with the fictional characters that inhabit my head, because I tell them I need this to happen in the chapter, and they tell me, no, I would never do that. Do you have arguments with fictional characters?
I do not do that. No.
Do your characters obey what you tell them to do?
For the most part, yeah. Writing my second book was it just kind of flowed so good for me. So I didn't run into that too much. I think a big part of that is I'd finished the draft. I'd finished basically the main story of my first book over 10 years ago. So I've been thinking for 10 years about all the scenes and events and outline of the second book. So it was able to flow more smoothly, and I didn't run into. I imagine if I today started the third book and went nonstop again, like I did on the second, I'd probably run into that a little more and be like, just get to this scene for me, please. Okay. But no, I haven't had any arguments yet to date.
So you plot out a bunch of your stuff in advance? Yeah,
I'm a major plotter. My second one, I don't know if I'm a major. I've heard some people have like 20-page outlines. Mine was like 6 to 8 pages, if I remember correctly. It grew a little bit as the story went on, but I definitely had from the prologue to the last chapter, at least a little snippet of each all mapped out before I went into it. And obviously you're changing and altering some things. You might add a chapter here. You're going to be adding notes to other chapters as you move along. But yeah, that was how my process went.
Nice.
Let's see. So do you have a favorite scene in either one of your books? And can you tell us about it without being spoilers?
Man, I like a lot of scenes in my second book. There's definitely one, which is, I can't really talk about it because it's spoiling it, but there's one that's like a major, it's probably the biggest scene in the whole series thus far. It explains a lot, and it's going to kind of, what I hope is that jaw-dropping scene. But it's also a scene that was heavily built up even in the first book leading to it. So I'm very proud of how it came out. But I think, we'll have to see how people do it. I missed the last thing, so I don't know what's being laughed at.
Oh, it's just Mike.
Oh,
Gotcha.
I don't know how plotters plot. I stray so often. You're also. Yeah, I don't, Annie. I'm right there with you. I don't know how plotters really. I just if I have to sit there and think about the book too much and think about where's this going to go, I just say I may as well just sit down and write the freaking thing, because I have like an index card kind of idea of what the story's going to be. And if I'm really lucky, I know what the end is going to be. So it gives me a kind of a point to shoot toward. And that's it, And
yeah, I think it just goes with people's personalities. I mean, I'm a very schedule-oriented person by nature. So I think that goes along with kind of the idea of
is that real, or is that are they making fun of you?
That's not real. Don't listen to this guy. But yeah, so I'm just very schedule oriented. I mean, even on like my construction sites, it's kind of a running joke of like, oh, Brian and his schedule, So
yeah, but a construction site,
well, it makes sense.
But money for a house,
they're really kind of similar. You got a schedule and you got a plot, a plot outline.
It's not similar at all.
They're a little bit similar.
I'm not spending $500,000 on a book.
that's
I'm not trying to live in it and not worry about whether it's going to fall down.
I said before, you could end up spending $10,000 on a book though, so you got to do it. You got to do it how you're comfortable, right?
I ain't spending $10,000 on a book either.
It's actually funny though, this conversation. So I was part of I was on one of the panels for TBRCon back in January, and it was and this discussion came up, and there were 4 of us there, and it got a little uncomfortable because one of the authors was saying what you're saying, Ro, of, they kind of just go as they write, they can't even consider, they don't know how people write like that because things can change so much. And then another author was kind of, I don't understand how, what's a Gantt chart? Should I know that?
I do. Yeah, actually, I'm writing something now. I
But
can't.
yeah, one of the other authors was like
Yeah,
kind of getting combative with that author, saying, "How can you not write without an outline? How could you write and not know what the ending's going to be? You know, where you're going with the thing." Well, it got a little uncomfortable for a little while, but I think we all just do what we're most comfortable with. So
I heard somebody at a con once talking about that, and they said you can drive at night with just your headlights and only see 20 feet in front of you, but you can drive the whole way like that. You could have a 1,000-mile trip in front of you. You can do it all seeing only 20 feet in front of you the whole way.
No, you cannot. I am much.
I think that depends how old you are and how good your eyesight is.
Yeah, well, okay, fair enough. Yeah.
I used to be, heavy outliner, and then, like I said, my characters just argue with me, and like I'm not going to do that. But
yeah.
I mean, I will not write a word until I know what the ending is, whether it be the chapter or the book. I have to have something to write towards.
Yeah, I need to know where I'm going. Same thing.
So
that's why I say I like to have the end. If I know what the end is, I can take a million different directions to get there, so long as I end up there.
That's what I found, because I never really followed my outline. So why do I bother to do it? Like I said, I need to know where do I need to end, and then I'll go there somehow. But I did just outline a 5-book series this week that I'm going to write in my free time, whatever that is.
Well, listen, I'm not outlining 5 books in advance. I'm 1 book at a time. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself there. So
I tried to outline a couple chapters for a character once, and the little bastard died on me. And I had no intention of him dying. Then I kind of went, oh, well, all this stuff is useless now because he did something stupid. But yeah, I still try, but it just, I don't know.
Hey, different things work for different people, man. That's life.
Whatever puts words on page.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Bryan, for you, what is the easiest and hardest part of writing? Is the first draft easy, hard? Is editing easy, hard? Is letting it finally go out in the world easy, hard?
This is so hard for me because I've had 2 very different processes. My first book took me 20 years to do. My second book I'm going to have published. It's going to come out 10 months after the first one did. And all I had written before publishing my first book of the second book was the prologue for it. So, I've done the whole process in less than a year. So it's hard to balance that thing. I can really only go by my second one. And honestly, I think drafting was the easiest for me. Maybe it's because, I don't know if this would stay the case if however many more books I write in my life. But for me, I think in this scenario, it was because, like I said, I've had 10 years. I've had so many of these scenes in my head. I knew exactly, I've envisioned them a million times. I knew exactly where I wanted to go with them. So I think that really helped me this stuff flew. It's 145,000 words, and I wrote 120,000 of it in 2 months. So it was just like flowing out of me as it was coming. And yeah, that was definitely the part I found easiest. For me, editing is always the part that's toughest. I want to say probably developmental editing is the toughest part for me, just because it's not something that comes naturally to me, which is probably because not having the background of creative writing and stuff like that. Something I definitely think I got better with the second book. That was by far like the most grueling process for me in the first book, was working with that editor and then having to alter so much of it afterwards. And yeah, just finding that balance of what I agree with and what I don't agree with, and then putting it to effect where it doesn't hurt the story. I mean, make it, especially my first book, I have this intricate magic system. You change one little thing and it could have a snowball effect of changing 10 things that you now need to remember down the line of the story. So yeah, that was definitely the thing I struggle with the most.
And are you going to stick with sci-fi only, or are there other genres?
So I hope down the road I'm writing more. I haven't read much, but I'm always into like dystopian and everything. I'd love to write. I actually have something that's like, I've written 35K words for it. I mean, it's another thing I wrote in like my early 20s. I'd love to get back to that in the future. But again, that would probably need a ton of work done to it. That was actually when I started, and it was just the whole Panther thing. I kind of just was going as I was going. There was no outline there. And, but but yeah, no, I'd love to write dystopian, and I would love to also write straight epic fantasy. I mean, that's been my go-to reads. My favorite book series is Wheel of Time, and so that is definitely something I'd like to do in the future as well. Yeah, I definitely felt as I said, the second book just flowed so much more naturally from me, and again, I don't know if it's because I had so much time between finishing book one and doing book two that it just flowed that well, or if just because it was already established, and maybe it was just harder for me to get the whole. I definitely gotten a little bit of criticism of kind of info dumps a little bit in my first book, and so I think maybe I struggled a little. I get a lot of praise for the world building, but maybe the way I went about it, some people might not be some people's style, and so. But I think now that a lot of that stuff was established, I was able to just go in the second book and flow with it all.
It's kind of hard to get away from a little info dumping, especially when you're starting a series and you've got to explain magic systems and, a lot of background on these different things. But yeah,
I mean, it was tough for my first book. I have my whole lore is there's 11 total worlds where people are living on them. There's this whole ancient alien thing that dates back to kind of like the Ice Age where all the worlds were connected. There was this great war, and I have this whole intricate magic system. You're asking these earthlings to come and fight. I can't just, some people were like, oh, we should have, you didn't need all that information, blah, blah, blah. But it was like, yeah, but if I want it to be believable that these people are going to leave Earth and go train to be soldiers in this other army, they need to kind of know a lot of this information beforehand. So, So it's just, maybe there were better ways it could have been done. I don't know. But then at the same time, everything's subjective, and I've had a ton of people who've had no issue with it. So.
All right. So what's your website?
It's BryanWilsonAuthor.com.
All one word?
Yeah.
So, Bryan, a few weeks ago, we had two aspiring authors on here, and we were giving advice. So what advice would you give to aspiring authors other than run away, like your hair's on fire?
Run away, run away.
But, for some of us, it's not that big a deal.
I would say, you just, if you believe in it enough, you got to keep going with it. I mean, and I don't, I had so many self-doubts. I mean, look at me. I'm someone with I math degree, work construction, like you said, not the typical writer that someone's going to think. And so I didn't have connections. So I had no idea how my book was going to be received by people. I liked it. And I kind of relied on my background of reading a gazillion books in my lifetime to say, I think other people can like this. But, you're never going to know unless you do it. And I feel fortunate enough that I did it, and I've gotten such a great response. I mean, some of the people who have been in this chat tonight have been people who have read and enjoyed my story. And, and that was also what gave me a kick in the butt to just jump right in book two. Was the second I started getting people, I have no idea who they are. People from all over the world giving me 5-star rating. What I love about Goodreads is you can see the person who gives you the rating, even if they don't leave a review. So it's like, I've gotten them countries that are spanning the globe. And it's been, I've gotten emails, through my contact on my website. Oh, I loved it. When's book 2 coming out? There's no greater feeling than someone you don't know who comes to you and says they really enjoyed it. That's the lift right there to say, okay, I did something right. And like anything, as we talked about, like with me building, I got much better as it went on. I'm confident I can get, not that I think this is bad. I think the first book is good, but I'm confident I can get nothing but better as it goes on. I think personally, I think my second book I'm blown away by my second book. So again, bias, but I think that is even a step above my first book. So I think that's proof of that.
That's good.
I will add to that, Mike, that, don't forget, kids, if a Giants fan can do it, you can do it too.
And it's always
I'll let you have your moment.
It's always good if you don't say my first book is perfect, because then where do you go from there?
Right.
So,
yeah.
No one says.
No, I listen. I know my first book is not perfect. It's, how could it be? It was over a 20-year span. I wrote some of it when I was 17 years old. So it's believe me, it works for my book though, because a big part of the development of my book is the characters are supposed to be very immature at the beginning and kind of mature more as the responsibilities fall on them. So it worked in my favor in that sense. But yeah, some of the writing was, believe me, when I got back to this thing the first time.
People will be reviewing you and saying, it's really nice how you tapped into that teenage angst. Like, yeah, I'm freaking brilliant.
Yeah. No, that was just me at the time.
So last question from my end, at least. Would you call your writing, is it fast-paced, medium, slow, and lots of details? How would you describe it?
I would say my first book is more medium-paced. It's much more a character-driven novel, or I don't want to say much more, but it's character-focused. I think the pace of it's a little bit slower paced in the first half, and then the pace really picks up in the second half. My second book is just straightforward, fast-paced. I mean, it's once the action takes off and it kind of doesn't stop. So, and that's why I'm hoping when people read this, they're going to appreciate the first one more, because a lot of it is kind of the buildup of the first one is what led to this. And, I think when people read my second book, that's more what you're going to be able to expect from the series moving forward is kind of what you get in the second one. So
the 11 to 17 book series. Yes.
Well, we'll see.
Audiobook.
So that break-ins group I'm in, we talk about this all the time. Sam, who I don't know if he's still here, but he's actually in the midst of trying to get one done for his book. I very much want to do one, but they're pricey. So I don't, I think Sam's in the works. Well, I don't want to spoil anything, but he, we're trying to figure out ways to get it done without having to go and just pay $2,500, $3,000 to someone. So especially having the longer book that I do. So we'll see. Yeah, well, he owes me for Sherpa. I'm assuming that means guiding or something like that. He owes me for doing that to him for about 10 different things. So I'll gladly take you up on that.
Well, Bryan, thank you very much for hanging out with us for an hour. Sorry we're doing it on a school night. But
it's not a school night. The kids are off tomorrow, actually. Well, one
really?
of them. Yeah.
I got to go to work tomorrow, so Mike doesn't.
Yeah, I'm off tomorrow, so.
Oh, nice. But yeah, no, thanks for having me on. This was a blast, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, can't wait to check out your Insta there a bit and go grab me a copy of Forbidden World. A couple people came on later and go, "What the hell's he talking about?" We know what it is.
Actually, did we even talk about that here, or was that the pre conversation?
How closely do people listen to us anyway?
It's more than 10 minutes ago. I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Okay. Anyway, you want to wave us out, Mike?
Okay. I'm going to hit end stream. We're going to wave awkwardly until it finally cuts off. You ready?
Like and subscribe.
Thanks for